right now. It looks like you're in a hotel.
Bro, I am. It's part of the story. I mean, when I moved out here, man, God just provided in some crazy ways. I ended up being able to stay at a hotel like rent-free for about 4 to 5 months. That was crazy. And then they reevaluated. The guy's a pastor and church planner himself. And then he hooked me up. So the amount that I pay for this spot and room service, you can't get anywhere in OC, and it's my own spot. So until I'm in Garden Grove right now, until maybe something else opens up, and I know something better, probably more like long term. I'm just, floating this for now.
It's amazing, bro. Could we get a little view of it? I mean,
it's a bit of a smaller deal here. I got this side up in here.
Wow.
This side over here.
That's beautiful, bro.
All of my tanking, my whiteboarding.
That's beautiful, bro.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are wanting me to move in right now and do the roommate thing. I could move into the CR house in Huntington Beach with Sammy, and the homie. And then I got other people that are wanting to get a house out in OC. And I'm just I'm like, I've done the roommate thing before. And I think the only roommate I'm trying to be living with is my wife here in the near future.
Oh, man, I feel you.
Let's just talk about that. But anyway, dude, so it's crazy. Even the crazy faith move to jump out to California. I left my paid position. I left my set, everything, and just took a big leap of faith. So coming out here, it's kind of been God continually opening up doors since August 2019. So.
Wow. That's amazing, man. Well, those of you guys who are tuning in, love to know where you're from. Maybe post your city or throw up your flag. You can put where you're originally from if you want.
Represent.
Yeah, but we're excited. Jason, I'm excited to talk with you. I just had a live with Isaiah yesterday.
Bro, I watched it, homie. He said he's going to tune in today. I was like, no, you ain't, bro. You stay up till like 4 a.m. You ain't waking up for a 10:30 a.m.
Bro, it was fire, dude. Like,
dude, it was.
What I'm excited about yesterday's and today's is because I feel like I have history with you guys that goes far beyond just connecting ministry wise. I mean, we've known each other since 2009 was when we met. 2008, 2009.
0809 Elk Grove.
So it's crazy, man. That was when you were with Pastor Jeremy. You had a crazier hairdo, I remember.
Mohawk.
And you guys were always ahead of the game on your swag, bro. That was when everyone had the skinny jeans and Toms. I don't know if people remember those phases.
Dog, I was repping the man bag back in 05.
That's crazy, 05. Bro.
People were like, what the? Honestly, Jeremy, who he was, people always thought we were very like SoCal LA, but we were like 209 the Valley.
I know, yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So what do you, I'd love for you maybe just share briefly, what have you been up to now? I know that God's been doing a lot with you in the Asian community, and that's been fairly new because you haven't touched that from the decade I've known you. It wasn't something that was on your primary focus to raise up the Asian American voice.
Not at all.
How did that journey could you walk us through your journey real quick from maybe Modesto all the way to like right now, maybe in a few minutes? What would you say has been your highlights?
Good. I'm totally gonna follow your lead, B, because we could talk about a lot of stuff. I've been watching you and Teo and Isaiah and Corey. I'm like, this could go so many different directions.
Yeah.
But I'll do this. The fast forward. So I'm a Korean adoptee, born in Korea, raised in America. And I was in that area in Modesto, California. That's where I met Brian years ago. We did our conferences back there. Once I got radically saved at 15, I ended up going into the ministry, full-time ministry at 18 in Bible college. Got hired at 19 as an outreach pastor for disturbed. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. I don't know why that happened. So I was a pastor out there in Modesto with Jeremy and the crew, and we used to do these conferences and just throwing in this piece of history. We did these conferences called Ammunition, and many of you guys know Brian's side of the story, where he heard the voice of God audibly for the first time in his life, maybe probably the only 1 or 2 times.
Yeah.
And anyway, we were running those conferences called Ammunition in 08, 09, 2010, and that's where Brian heard God in that tent with 1,000+ people with Chris Hill speaking. Anyway, that's a little bit of our history. I was out there for a number of years just doing pastoring, kind of the Nineveh thinking, if you can win a city, you can win and turn a nation. And I never was thinking anything about the nations, never thinking about Matthew 24:14 and the gospel going to all the nations and finishing the Great Commission. All of that language, even just thinking about nations, thinking more international and global, it wasn't in my paradigm. And, you know, we were all about our city, you know, like we were focused here. And we were always saying, like, the Devil's Youth Group is much bigger than ours. We got a lot of work to do.
I remember that saying, bro. I remember that.
You know what I'm saying? It was always kind of like, hey, let's not get caught up in all the other stuff. Let's just do what we got to do now right in front of us. So that was like my focus to get an understanding. And I opened up saying I was a Korean adoptee because I did not know, everyone paying attention here, I did not even know what kimchi was until I was 27, guys.
I even know what kimchi was, bro.
I know. That's like you not even knowing, bro, like what a burrito is, or a Filipino not knowing what lumpia is, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the fact that I was a Korean adoptee and I had no connection to my Asian culture, I guess I'll do it in 3 segments, and this is my fast forward. I had no connection, and the only real Asians I actually knew was David Kim with Content, The Call.
Yes.
He was it. And that was only because of Isaiah's connection, and we met him at Berkeley. So this is like 2011, 2010, the first real Asian guy I'm meeting. The only other one was Jason Ma, which is an interesting connection, and that was just because of 1040 film, and that was it. And so I say all this. It was very local and focused, and that was 2000. This is like 04, probably like 2011. And it's a very, very long story. And in my own story and journey, I had a big transition. And then years later, I felt God speaking to me. And the second segment is I joined the prayer movement and the missions movement. And God told me to move to Kansas City. And long story short, he spoke to me to move there. Within 4 months, I packed up everything and I moved to KC. And I was in Kansas City, Missouri. And God said, go. And I'll unpack the rest later. But I want you to catch the prayer movement and the missions movement and what I'm doing globally. And so I took the big jump, and unbeknownst to me, and I'll give you that fast forward, that'd be the second segment. My story's like in 3 parts. The second segment was, man, discovering all of the language of the prayer movement, everything that Mike Bickle will talk about, or Corey Russell would talk about, or, I mean, there's so much just in regards to what God's doing in the nations. And the prayer movement and the 2 being married as one, all of that, even the church planning movement and thinking different from just what I always knew in the mega church to thinking the self-multiplying movements that are happening in other nations like China or India or Indonesia or Mongolia. I had no grid for that, although principally we were doing it locally. So fast forwarding to, really what Brian asked, for those that are jumping on, he wanted to know my story from back not being a part of anything Asian as an adoptee to now being where I'm at now, going full force, ready to give my whole life to see Asians rise at this unique time in history. And so the first segment was local church pastoring, no Asian connection. The second phase was a 7-year period, prayer, missions, global missions, finishing the Great Commission. And now all of my closest friends are Asian and Korean. And in this 7-year period, God hijacks me and begins to open up all these doors to speak in Korean churches and all these different backgrounds. I didn't go to seminary, and I don't speak the Korean language. And like I said, I didn't even know what kimchi was, our staple food. So that was a 7-year period doing that. Man, there's so much to fast forward. And here's the third category. In that time, transitioning in my 7 years, this past year and a half, I kind of got brought into kind of the stadium event world. And so I worked for the Send. For those of you that are aware, the Send Orlando.
It's online too right now, right? The Send going on in Brazil.
So Brian was there. So that was the Send Orlando. Then they did the Send Brazil, which Brian, you went. And now today they're actually doing a live right now, and they're probably going to broadcast the live will probably be 2 to 3 million. The rebroadcast for people that will watch will probably be in the 20 million plus.
So they had 100,000 on YouTube already today.
I know, and that's just
so
the morning
wild.
time. The word's getting out and people are sharing too. And so I say that because I worked for the Send, and then I ended up working for a few other organizations, offered other jobs with stadium events. I work in LA right now, Southern California, with One Nation, One Day, with Dominic Russo, and with what they're doing. But they hired me in particular to do Asian representation and bring the Asian American churches of LA in the storyline, because we have a seat at the table. So that's kind of a little bit of what I've been in. And then it was recent. I'll just say it for what it is. I'm not trying to brag on it, but it's a big piece. I was on a 40-day fast with a good close friend, and we dedicated this fast. God raise up the Asian American voice and bring revival to the Asian people. And in this time, as we were fasting and dedicating this time to God, God, hear us today. It was in that time, even Brian Brent and Nick Brent, if you're still on, and Sammy Rodriguez, the circuit riders, our close fam, connected with the Send, YWAM, that whole world, they were praying over us one day in the garage. You know the famous garage, B.
Yeah.
Bro, we're in the garage, and literally, I don't know if you know this, but they don't live there anymore.
No.
They had to move out. It's a long story.
Wild.
We were in the garage, and they literally said, you guys might be the last people we ever pray for, and perhaps a movement's birthed out of this garage. They're praying for us in the garage. Will Chung's weeping. I'm weeping. They're praying for us, and they're literally saying, Jason, Will, now is the time for the Asian voice, all this crazy stuff they're praying. And then literally just sticking to my story, and I'm almost done, the fast forward, Nick was saying, Jason, you've helped mobilize for everyone else's events. You've helped serve everyone else's movements, but God is saying now's the time to go after the Asian people. And anyway, just that's a little bit of the history of what's like led me to this point. I come out of that 40-day fast. I feel God speaking very clearly, give everything, heart and soul, to whatever this will look like. But now's the time to begin to gather and to begin to unite and catalyze the Asian people, both here in America as Asian diaspora, but also the unique connection between the nations in Asia. Because the very unique thing about the global citizenship and the relationships of Asian diaspora, if you impact Koreans in LA, you are directly impacting Koreans that are in Korea. And the world is so small because their families live there, or they have cousins or friends or brothers all over the world. And not, I mean, just if we're talking, I'm Korean, but if we're just talking Koreans alone, we are the most dispersed, scattered nation in the world. And we're in over 182 nations. And we've been poised for unique influence and revival. And everywhere you go in the world, there's going to be Korean barbecue and there's going to be Korean church. But I say that it's not just about Korean, but that's just one of the people, the hermit kingdom, that God's positioned for unique global influence, who carry this duality. They speak multiple languages. They know multiple cultures. And that's just Korea. So anyway, that's kind of my fast forward that has led me to this moment. And I'm in this place right now of incubation, of really now asking the Lord, what is Asia Rising fully? What do we believe in champion? But then what is in particular our unique assignment that we are to play? And that's where I'm at right now.
You know, I want to retouch on this because I've never actually talked to you about this, which Sam Choi's commenting real quick. Just want to acknowledge that comment on the cleanest Corona haircut. I just want to say we freaking love Sam. Sam, I just love him so much, and his wife. But check this out. We've never talked about this. You were adopted. What is your story? Because
I love you, B.
Literally, like I've known you for 10 years. I've never asked you this. You remind me of almost like a Moses, man. Like you have this crazy story, and God's called you as a deliverer of your people. And it's so much. I feel like me and you are very similar. I'm very disconnected to Hispanic culture. I mean, trust me, I love the food. Everyone in my family speaks Spanish except me. But I love the music, although I can't understand it. I married a Hispanic woman from a third world country. My wife's from El Salvador, born in El Salvador, came here to America. But regardless of me, what is like your story, man? Like, who are your biological parents? Have you met them? What was it like growing up with white parents? Is that accurate? Your parents were white.
Very
You're
white.
Korean. Like, what was it like growing up, knowing I look different? I like in every aspect. Could you just walk us through a little bit of what that was like before we get into right now? And
Yeah,
Stozy just jumped on. What up, Chris? Good to see you, man.
Bro, we got lots of friends chiming in. This is fun. Man, to answer that question, B, in a short manner, I could say this. People tend to, when it comes to adoption, there's always this like, what do I ask or how do I say it? Because, you know, most people, it can be a very sore spot, and we're still figuring out identity. So that all of you that do that, that's good. To be careful how you tread and have that conversation.
Yeah.
People do that to me, and I've always told them, fam, I'm good. I don't know what it was, and I don't know if it was the grace and mercy of God on my life. I don't know if it was the unique love my parents showed me. I honestly can't tell you, because you can't, I'll touch this real quick and I'll segue right into what you asked. You can't necessarily know, there's no guarantee when it comes to adoption that you can be foolproof, no, your child won't have identity issues. The example would be this. I'm adopted from Korea at age 2. I had 0 issues regarding feeling like abandonment or rejection or what, you know, my white parents, you're not my real parents or whatever, you know.
You never went through that.
Check this out. I never did. But check this out. My older brother, who's white, 6'1", my brother Brent, and he'd be fine with me saying this, he was adopted from birth. From birth. My parents got him from the hospital in Vegas. He's white in a white family, and he was the one years later doing the mommy daddy abandonment issues and rejection, and would always be like throwing a fit, to be honest, in the early years, probably the first 20 years. And I'm the Asian that would be tapping him like, bro, get over it. I'm like, you're the white guy in the white family from birth. I'm the Asian guy at age 2 in the white family with all white people. If anyone should be complaining, it's me. And I told him, get over yourself. God's done so much. Man, we have been so blessed. We shouldn't even be here right now.
Wow.
So I say that only to give my part of the story, not to hit a pain point for any adoptees watching, but my point I'm saying is there's no foolproof way, because if anyone should have had the issues, it should have been me, not my brother. So I say that because for me, I don't know what did it, but I only feel like it's God. Of course, any Asian watching, we do have many Asians chiming in. We've all had the classic pull their eyes back, oh, you Chinese, or, you know, or like whatever it is, if you bring your Asian food to school and it smells and the whole Asian story stuff. But like, for me, I just always thought like, I took pride in it. I still to this day, man, where's my Asian mask? God, you gotta do this. I still to this day take pride. I will rock this thing. I like this. Other people are like, oh, I don't want to rock it. I feel like I'm like I feel like I'm in a Kinja's film, a music video every time. My hip hop background. I've always loved Asian culture. So I say that even when I was younger, I would look at the fact that I was the only Asian, and I loved that. I was like, you know what? These are my friends, these are my fam, and I never saw it any differently. And
you were able to really look past the outer and the actual race of thinking my parents are white, I'm adopted, I'm Asian. You went full in, like that was your family.
My mind is not Eastern. I have the Western mindset. For Asians, they understand code switching. You have to like be one thing at one point to certain people, and you're constantly code switching your language, your culture. I've only had the Western mindset. I knew I was chosen. I knew I was adopted. I always said, even at a young age, some people are just birthed and you get what you get. Where in my case, as an adoptee, I was chosen. So I try to tell adoptees to even understand that you were actually handpicked and selected.
Because that's a very different perspective. An adoptee can say, I was rejected, versus an adoptee can say, I was accepted. That's two very different ways to view that situation.
It is. It's all about perspective. It's all about perspective. And, you know, and I get it because, you know, at the same point, I don't know my biological parents.
You've never met them?
Never. Oh, bro, if I met him, it would probably be one of my big stories that I talk about. You're talking to someone that my date of birth is still a prediction.
Wow.
October 30th, 1985. It literally is what doctors looked at me at a young age, and they made a prediction within a 2-month period of how old I actually was.
So you don't even fully know when your birthday is?
No, it's a prediction.
That is what, Jason, I never knew that about you, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah, so if you looked at my adoption papers and the basics, the way the story goes is I was pretty much put in front of a Christian organization in Korea, in Seoul. And I had some basic information. I had some basic information next to me.
Wow.
And if you looked at all of it, it would say biological parents, unknown. Age, unknown. History and medical, unknown. And I remember the Lord spoke to me about 2-3 years ago. I felt like the Lord was just giving me a message to even bring to many others that maybe could relate, even though I never felt the pain point. But how many people feel unknown, but knowing that God knew me the entire time? And it's just interesting when you look at it on paper, everything that should be my identity is unknown. But I think there's this crazy thing in my worldview and understanding. I've been adopted twice by God and my parents and brought into a family, and I bear their name, I bear that inheritance, and I belong. And I for whatever reason, God's done something in that way in my life, as far as in my actual earthly family. But yeah,
that's powerful.
Yeah, so I don't actually know my biological parents. I want to one day.
Do you know the story of what happened? Like you were born. So were you dropped off in an adoption agency? Were you how did your parents come to adopt you from Korea?
Yeah. So, you know, there's that famous documentary. If you guys are interested, you should watch it, called The Dropbox Film.
Yes.
And, you know, anyway, this guy, Pastor Lee, opens up his home. He builds this unique door within his actual front door of a home. And it was called the baby box. And mothers could bring their children, because in Korea, if you have a child, this is unique, and it's probably connected to my story. If you have a child and you're not married, or there's something that it wasn't done properly, you know, that people don't get married out of wedlock. There's so much shame, and there's so much there on them for what reason, how they got that child. They normally abort the child or get rid of the child. So uniquely there, so people would come and they're putting these children in the baby box, and they literally ring the doorbell, and they'll put the baby in these like cloths. They prepare it. They put it in the door. It's like this crazy contraption that the guy built. And they ring the doorbell, and 24/7, this is in Korea, Pastor Lee will come running down in the documentary. They'll run down at 3 a.m. because the doorbell was rang, and they'll literally get the child, and literally in the middle of the night, they will dedicate that child to the Lord, that this child's been chosen and this child belongs to God. And they literally raise all these children, and many of them are actually ones with special needs or deformities.
Wow.
All that said, before there was a baby box, 2015, there was just a box. And what I mean by that is, what I've been told, the basics was, I was put in front of an orphanage in Korea. It's in Itaewon. It's near the military base. I was put in front of this orphanage with like a box of things, of my belongings, a little bit of information about me, not much. And I was like put in front of this agency knowing they're obviously going to pick up this child. As far as what I know of my mother, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about my mom or my dad. It was completely one of those things where it was exclusivity, but I think what I know is they just got me from an orphanage. So that's the
Wow.
that's the backdrop is regarding my parents, my biological parents. And I just say this because as you're opening up the road, I'm just following your energy, B. But I know I've gone to Korea and I've tried to pursue this a little bit lightweight. And when I was there, it was crazy. Through a series of events, I ended up going to the orphanage, and I ended up visiting it for the first time 25
What was
years
that
later.
like for you emotionally, like spiritually? What was it like to go there?
The best way I could explain it, it felt like a piece in my story was being tied. A sense of closure, not that I needed it, but a sense of like, whoa, I was here as a child. Literally, when I met with the director that's been there for over 25, 30 years, he literally just retired 6 months before, but he still visits every day because he loves the place. I got to see that guy. I sit down with him. He opens up this book and he says, this is when children are admitted. He says, can you find yourself? And I start flipping through the pages and I'm like, yo, that's me. And it's literally the date I was admitted, my picture, the whole thing. And so it was more of this, like, it was a sense of closure, and not even closure, but almost opening up a new chapter to say, wow, God, almost a recognizing your hand's been on my life this entire time. And it's like, now I'm revisiting my history. And there's a lot to this story, B, but that year, 2013, was me joining the missions movement, the prayer movement, meeting all these Koreans, discovering what kimchi was, speaking at Korean churches all over the country. All that happened in 2013, including my trip, my pilgrimage back to Korea on a tour with Lauren Cunningham in a bus, doing 10 cities in 10 days, calling Korea to missions. All this was in that period of time. And so for me, it was almost like God unlocking the Moses story, the diaspora story. You've been displaced and you've had no connection to your Asian heritage or Korean story, but now I'm setting you up and I'm unlocking all that's been hidden all these years.
Man,
That's like a fast forward.
I think what's powerful to me of your story is the perspective that you've been able to keep with so many people. I mean, I feel like I've complained more than you have. And I have I know my parents. I come from a divorced family. I come from a family where there was abuse and things of that sort. But to see you and how you've thrived, I've known you for years, man. And it makes me respect you a billion times more than I already do. But just to witness what it makes sense why God would raise up a Asian American, Asian global movement through your life, because you know what I mean? The biggest thing that I've witnessed personally going to Korean churches and some Chinese churches is there is set, like you guys have hit on it, there's an identity that's being searched for. You know, that Asians, I feel like, have tried to find it in education, or they've tried to find it in approval of their parents. There was this one person years ago, they were saying, man, if Jesus was Korean, he probably would have went to college, not the cross, and you look at, like, there's this longing for that. But man, when I see your life, it's like God really has given you a Moses story, where Moses was fully submerged in the Egyptian culture. He didn't know anything of his Hebrew culture, and the Lord takes him out, and brings him to a Jethro. And I'm pretty sure you can find the Jethros in your life and the men that have formed you in these ways. But man, now fast forward to now, what are you believing God to do with people that have struggled with identity? They've struggled. I won't go into any detail of it, but I had a dream, with you, and there was various parts of it with the Asian culture. I feel like you're one that's God is using to catalyze so much. What do you see now happening when Asians get what you've got? Like, they're fully secure in their identity. They're fully secure in, who they are. They're not wavering back and forth. Am I chosen? Am I not chosen? you know, like that I feel like you've broken the fear of man, even the fear of man that comes in the name of honoring culture. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because the fear of a godly man is still fear of man. What do you feel like is next for Asians when they grasp who they are in today's culture? It's a big question. I know I just kind of went all over the place because I'm just getting blown away. But
No, this is good, B. I mean, I didn't see actually the conversation going at least 20 minutes, at least even on this topic, which is great. I'm going to just say this really with confidence and not in cockiness. There's such a false humility in the Asian community that
I agree.
has to get destroyed.
I agree. Can you explain what that is? Maybe they don't fully. I've seen that, but could you explain?
Bro, if you knew how many messages and backlash I'm even getting for calling something Asia Rising, even in the name Rising, it touches a pain point that many would go, yes, it is time. Where then some that have been assimilating, that are kind of like they're all good, or they think it is. Many of them are kind of like, what? I honestly, more in the conservative streams, I think many of them even kind of go like, why is there a need to rise, or why is there this thing like you got like almost like this like fist in the air, and many people just misconstrue it. And honestly, there's a lot to unpack there that I don't know if I'm ready to fully be able to do it in a condensed way, but I'll just try to just fire real quick. There's such a false humility, and honestly, I'll say it like this. It goes back to what people have been parented in, and generations of the things that can be redeemed in Asian culture, but then the things that actually can be our demise. For example, there is a Chinese proverb that's connected to Koreans and many others, but in the culture, it says this: check this out, B, the nail that sticks out gets hit. The nail that sticks out gets hammered back in. That is in the psyche of the Asian culture.
Wow.
Don't stand out. Don't be an individual. Very opposite of the West. Don't make a scene. Blend in. Don't confront. Honor. Even if the people are wrong, honor. Sweep it under the rug. I mean, honestly, you can go for a while. So when you start talking about something, and even uniquely, I might be maybe one of the few Asians that would create something called Asia Rising because I don't think Eastern. And I'm more looking at it from a different perspective, saying, guys, now though is the time.
And what Hebrew would have went against Egypt, except the one that had an Egypt mindset? It wouldn't. A Hebrew with a Hebrew mindset that was born in slave. Moses never knew the slave mentality, and I don't think you've known the almost like this slave mentality of feeling like I don't want to speak out. You've only known, Bo. I remember you're a breakdancer, bro. You freaking get in front of crowds, and I've seen you, bro. Like,
yeah, that b-boy style. Dude, there's so much to say on this, B, but I want to try to bring some points that I know you've already asked. You said, what do I feel like God's doing in the midst of this? I say I'll bring it full circle. I believe unapologetically and with confidence, one of the greatest moves of God that will take place in the earth is going to be led by the Asian community. And and people would say that that's cocky. It's not cocky when you look at the sheer numbers and you understand the moves of God that are happening around the earth among the Asian community. 1.5 billion in China, 1.2 billion in India. We're talking about large portions of the world. Indonesia, Korea, like God, Singapore. Like, when we understand God's end time call, and we understand that this is all about the return of Christ, the nations glad, singing of the knowledge of God, and we look at the bigger picture, and then we understand how that relates to Asian diaspora and Asian Americans, and what God does here in the West directly impacts what God does there in the East. It is so connected. And that is why I can't, it's almost like it's the sleeping giant, the Asian Church of America, not in other nations. In other nations, Asia's crushing it. But in America, we are like we're on the back burner. We're hidden. Many are afraid. They're in the caves, similar to like Elijah. They're in the caves. It's like Gideon, the weakest of our clan. And God, can you really use us? But I believe God is speaking to the Asian community. And it's a word that God's given many of my friends and some prophets. It's the Gideon word, mighty warrior, I am with you. Mighty warrior, now is the time. And I actually believe, I'll say this, dude, and there's more to unpack on it that I'm still figuring out, but I actually believe God is going to use the Asian community. Man, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I actually really do believe if you look in Judges in the story of Gideon and defeating the Midianites, as they raised up the weakest of their clan and Manasseh, as they raised up, they actually played a unique catalyst role in bringing the rest of the tribes together. So I actually do think the Asian community is going to play a very unique role in giving leadership to minorities. And I know that's a big statement, and I know many people might disagree, but I really believe the Asian community plays such a key role. So to answer the quick question you asked, I just believe there's such a destiny on the Asian people. And I just feel like for me, this is it. Who is rallying the Asian community in America? Who's actually creating space to actually have this conversation and plow and pioneer for it? If you look at it, you can't point to one preacher other than Francis Chan, who many say he's an anomaly and he doesn't really claim his Chinese heritage. So many say he doesn't count. You can't point to one worship team you're listening to on your Spotify that's Asian.
Or a worship leader.
Or a worship leader. You can't point on a national scale. You can't.
A preacher.
That's what I'm saying. The preacher, the worship leader, or church. But yet you can point to culture that's been prophesying in the spirit. Now's the time. Parasite, Crazy Rich Asians, BTS. The list goes on and on and on.
The world has grabbed something the church hasn't got yet.
And the Asian community, my thing was, if God's showing us right now, truly, the world was celebrating Asian culture. The entire world, everyone was celebrating it from the main stage and the silver screen just 3 months ago, right? Remember the Oscars, the whole thing. And then it's like abruptly overnight, COVID-19, and the world is either in support or hate towards the Asian community. I believe it's the enemy working overtime to shut the Asian voice down. Not only, but I believe it's one of the things connected. But I only say all this because what you just said, the world is catching something, but many of the churches still like hiding back. So for me as an Asian believer, there's this thing inside of me that I've been catching saying, what if we begin to gather and galvanize what God is doing among the Asian community? Because it's not that we're not seeing God do something. It's just that we're so scattered. We're so divided. We're not even connected. There's no one centralized place. There's no one website. There's no one main email list and network. We're all so disconnected. Koreans, Chinese, Vietnamese, Laos, Hmong, Japanese. And there's no one place or one network that has figured out a way to gather, to unite, to empower, and catalyze them into kingdom activity.
Wow.
And I just believe it's worth millions and millions and millions of dollars of the investors. It's worth every penny. I believe the people, God will bring resources. I believe God, the amount of vision that could be a part of this, the sky's the limit. And I believe Asia Rising is one small piece that God's going to raise up so many other groups, organizations, and leaders. But I just believe that when I look at it, humbly, there's no one doing this right now in the Asian community, Brian.
You know, living in Los Angeles, and it's interesting, man, living in LA, back when you can go out before there was a stay-at-home order, you know, I used to drive to Los Angeles every day because I preach in high schools. And I'd always drive by these billboards and, you know, I would see, you know, I remember when the Jack and the Beanstalk movie came out and there was these billboards that talked about like, you know, defeating a giant, or you'd see these billboards on certain movies. And I always thought Hollywood is one of the greatest prophetic voices a lot of times that I feel like when us as a church miss it. I love the Avengers, man. It's one of my favorite movies.
Talk
And
about it.
my favorite scene is when you got Captain America, man, that's just at his end. His shield is shattered. And the guy looks like he's about to just weep, man. He gets a massive army in front of him. And you just hear that little scene, Captain, we're coming in, all of a sudden Strange and his dudes. And every time I get chills because I'm like, man, these Avengers were people that all look different. But you take one Avenger out, and I feel like the Asian people has been this missing Avenger in the massive fight, man. That almost like it's like they show up to the scene, man, and without you can't have the Avengers without Spider-Man. You can't have them without Thor. You cannot have a global revival without the Asian voice. I've had the privilege of being around a lot of Koreans and hearing of Prayer Mountain and hearing of the prayer culture. And we say it all the time in non-Korean church. We're going to pray like the Koreans. We've acknowledged that there's a prayer culture, yet we haven't made space for them.
Wow.
And I'm guilty of that, man. Even in gatherings we've done, I don't remember ever having an Asian speaker. And it's not something that we've intentionally done,
Sure.
I've gotten flack before, you need more African Americans and you need more of this. And I've never even, my mind's not even thinking of that. I'm not purposely trying to cater to one group. I just feel like now, man, the more I hear your story, it just makes sense why God would choose you. And I'm not saying that it's all hinging on your show. I think God's going to use you to mobilize and raise up a lot of leaders. But hearing the story, the adoption story, the mindset, the perspective, you were a part of everything I see, you were part of, in my opinion, the most catalytic youth ministry in America back in the day was Jeremy Johnson. I don't know any youth pastor that held a youth conference that Ryan Harbunke came to.
Right.
Where 4,000, that was just in itself, man. That's just like, you don't hear about that. And your training, your background has all positioned you. You've had church world, you've had missions world, you've had pain intermixed into all that, and you're now positioned for one of the greatest outpourings, I think, to call all Asians to the front lines, man.
You sharing that is so encouraging. Even as you're sharing, our boy Isaiah Salavar's in the chat. Even Isaiah got saved out of that church. And I just think even for you, B, how God called you to the high schools of America, I think for me, my biggest thing is I just want to be a servant and try to help serve the Asian community. It's what Nick Brent told me, Asia Rising, that it would be a Barnabas to what God is wanting to do. And, I think there's so many layers of what you're saying. I'm so encouraged by what you're saying. It's almost hard to condense it. But I just feel like what you just said about that I freaked out because you were talking about the Avengers illustration, but talking about the Asian community and our seat at the table in that Avenger initiative. Asia Rising in a different scale, in a different way. I believe what happened in the Avengers was there was all these key heroes coming together that all have their own film, their own story, and we're crushing it. But only together, they were taking on something so great, so powerful, a task too great that one person could actually accomplish, that only together could they actually achieve victory. I really feel that that's what God's speaking to the Asian community right now. And I really believe a big piece is unity. I really do. Because it's like you said, you can't point to one particular group, but there's something I believe when we come together, the power in our numbers, even in America, and not saying it will all be about numbers. I believe it's going to be the consecrated ones that will be the remnant, but I do believe there's something that's going to happen. I'm just going to prophesy it and say it. I had plans with a team of people, Andy Bird, I'm on a call with him this Monday, and many others. We wanted to break, if you will, the glass ceiling over the Asian community. And I believe it would break the ceiling. And we wanted to gather 15 to 20,000 Asians at something called Asia Rising 2020. And we wanted to bring those Asians into the Send at Kansas City and represent like 1/4 of that stadium.
Wow.
I say that because
Come on.
America's not seen that. Asian American Christians have not seen anything like that. When I say that, many go, Jason, I can't imagine that. Could that even happen? But if that did, and they'll literally be in tears sharing, man, I dream of a day where we could actually see our people gather like that. And I'm kind of like, guys, let's do it. And I just believe so much. There's something around unity. There's something, there's something, as I'm sharing, there's someone could be listening that's Asian and they're like, they see all the complexities of this. And I get it. There's a lot to share about this, but I just really do believe, now's the time. I talk about it more on other platforms and even Asia Rising, but I know we're going to be running out of time here in about 13 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'd say this, dude, is you asked something earlier and I didn't answer it. And I just want to throw this in for 60 seconds. You asked in regards to the Asian identity and knowing the Eastern mindset and culture and the things that many of us that were parented in and we've adopted. For example, I have a friend and she literally grew up not liking Black people. And she grew up simply because her parents told her, because of the LA riots, she just grew up with this negative connotation toward Black people. So she adopted that. She was parented into that. That's just one example I'm giving you right now. Or the example of not kingdom culture, but Asian culture, the nail that sticks out, you get hammered back in. Don't stand out. I could go on and on and on. Women's voice. You know the name for a woman pastor in Korean is called Samonim, which actually means silent one. Wow. Pastor's wife in Korean, the actual definition actually means a silent one. So I'm just saying, it goes deep in the fabric of the culture. And if we're talking about Asian culture, but let's pause on that. Let's go higher. Hispanics, Blacks, white, all people, we can't allow our culture to ever be something that we worship or hold higher than kingdom culture. And we always say it like this: if you don't have an identity in Christ, you will be in an identity crisis. And I really believe the Asian community, as well as all people, all nations, until we first find out who God truly is and who we are because of that, I think we're always going to struggle. But I believe once we begin to get a proper understanding of the kingdom and who we are in Christ, our sonship, I'm a son first before I'm ever a servant, right? It's not what I do, but it's who I am, right? Or it's not my Korean culture. I don't hold that above God. God redeems my culture. I'm a son. I'm a child of God. I'm a citizen of heaven, but it expresses itself through my Korean culture. And I help people understand, don't separate the two, because I like to say it like this: Jesus is a Jewish man. And Jesus died a Jewish man. He, in his resurrected body, he's a Jewish man. And for 1 billion years, he'll be a Jewish man. So I always tell people, it's not that you just throw out your culture, but God redeems it. But he made you for a unique reason. Whoever you are in the chat, I just got to hit this real quick. Black, Hispanic, white, mixed, whatever unique culture you have that maybe has even confused you. That's maybe even made you ask the question, why am I the way I am? Why did I grow up the way that I did? I want you to know God had a unique plan from the very beginning. And I got to land my point. When God thought of Korean people, he had a dream. And it's what Lou always says, Lou Engle. He wraps skin and bone around it, and it's you. When God thought about the Hispanic community and a revival and awakening that would sweep across our nation, I really believe he had Brian Barcelona in mind. I believe Isaiah Saldivar, he had you in mind. I really believe there's a move of God coming, Brian. I've never told you this. That's related to the second-gen Hispanics. Matt Cruz, Isaiah Saldivar, you, and many others. Sammy Rodriguez. God is uniting something, and I believe God's made you Hispanic in LA for such a unique time as this. But God had that all in mind from the beginning. And I'll land the point. When God thought of all that said, Jesus, a Jewish man, resurrected a billion years from now. Think about this, all of you that are on the live. When you die and in your resurrected body before the Lord in eternity, you will always be who you are. I'll be a Korean man in my resurrected body for eternity. Brian, you'll be Hispanic. Others that are watching, you'll be your culture. The big question is why? And my big thing is this: it's not that we throw out our culture, it's that we don't put that, we don't allow that to be priority above kingdom culture. So that's like my short, long answer. I believe the answer is not just for the Asian community, but for all people to begin to find our true identity in Christ, that we don't find ourselves in a lifetime of identity crisis. And as we get a hold of that in God, then we position and we poise that to now influence our culture and our people.
You know, I think this issue, because I'll be honest with you, I've never been a huge fan on people that just speak race messages, because I feel like I'll be honest, you have certain cultures that feel I'm owed this because there was an injustice done to me. And yes, the injustice is true, but when pain is your only fuel, it's the only thing you produce. If pain is what you fuel your people with, the only byproduct of you and the only fruit you're going to produce is hate. And then I see the other perspective where, I'll be honest with you, I feel like, I'm around a lot of white people as well. And I feel like sometimes there's this shame that comes over white culture as well. Because maybe their generation didn't do the injustices, but they now carry the shame with it. And it's almost like you could have brown power, you could have Asian power, you could have black power, but the moment you mention white power, you've now totally have resubmerged. And it's just, for me, I've always avoided the topic of race because people have so much opinions in it. But I really think I feel like I've been such an outcast because I'm Hispanic in my color. I don't speak Spanish. I freaking love Mexican music. I bump Mexican music in my car. I love it. I feel like this confused guy sometimes because I'm like, I love the culture, but I've also had my father, who's Hispanic, spoke very negatively of Hispanics. So I grew up like with this twisted view, or my grandma, my great grandparents are from Mexico. My father was a construction worker. He spoke the negative side of Hispanic culture. I married a Hispanic woman who's first generation. I went to a Hispanic church who honestly a lot of times would shame me because I didn't know Spanish.
Right.
So they would be like, why don't you know Spanish? I'm like, because I live in America. Like, I don't know, like, but you live. And so I feel like I say all that to say, I believe what God wants to do with our generation in the kingdom and race message is that we would fuel it, not from pain. I don't think personally, I've taught my daughter that when she repents and she says sorry, I don't bring it up again. And right. I feel like the days of having 1 million repentant services have to come to an end. There has to be a day where the racists say, we just lay it down, we forgive, and we just move forward, man. And I'm not saying you don't acknowledge the real pain and injustice that has happened, but there has to come a point where we move past that. When I see you're not a man that is fueling a movement off of the pain of the Asian people. You were treated injustly. This happened to you. You're not saying that. You're actually saying the opposite. God has called you. It's like the two perspectives. I was adopted, therefore you were rejected. No. I was adopted. I was accepted. It's two messages that can't go parallel. You got to pick which one you're going to be. And I know we got to close right now, but it's like, I really feel like, Jason, just
this is good,
you. I feel like Asia Rising is not just for Asians. It's a new way of dealing with race issues in today's culture. And the new way I feel like of dealing with race issues is not the old model. Just like you can't put a new wine in old wineskins, you can't put the old model of doing race issues and these old organizations that had to form back in the days to fight the injustice. It's a different battle today.
I'm about to throw this computer out my window. You're getting me fired up right now.
Man, it's a different battle, and it's a different way we fight. You know what I mean? I feel like you you fight through encouragement. Oh, you're gonna, like you pulled your eyes, but you're gonna call me these names. Oh man, we freaking love you. We bless you. Oh man, you're totally speaking out of ignorance just because you don't know. It's okay. Instead of like the opposite, So I know we got to get going, man. We're gonna lose our live. We're gonna be uploading this on YouTube as well. So, but we freaking love you, man. And I don't know if you have any closing words the last minute here.
Man, just because I just have to close on your thought you just said. We got to talk more, but I really do believe one of the things God's doing with Asia Rising, and it's not the thing I would have picked, is playing a unique role in actually uniting people of color, and even all people of color. I'm talking about white, Crayola, all colors.
Yeah.
I believe a unique way of how we're addressing pain. And I actually believe it might be one of the catalysts God's used, even related to that dream you sent me, but wisdom, which I'm not going to address that right now. But I'll just say, I really do believe in the Asian community and those that are watching, and even those of people of color that are watching right now. Man, what did Jesus do? Our model and our champion and our standard, hanging on a cross, the ones that nailed his hands, put the thorns in his brow, stabbed him, his accusers, his enemies, hanging on a cross. What does he say? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Man, if that is not our goal, to walk in love and love people that way, then everything else we're doing, it's an echo. It's an empty narrative. It's what everyone else is saying on the news, all the race talk. It's going nowhere. And it's only driving more division. The only thing that can redeem and restore our world in America, especially culture, the different races, man, it's going to be the cross. It's going to be the cross. And it's going to be that right there, man. Jesus hanging on a cross, dude.
Good.
That's what I've been seeing all day, every day. I know we got to end.
Yeah, and Jesus wasn't after a political revolution.
He wasn't.
I mean, constantly he told his disciples, or he's now you're going to overthrow Rome. It's not about Rome being overthrown. I feel like it's not about a new president coming in, new administration. If they get it, they get it. We got 15 seconds. Could you just pray us out in like 10 seconds?
Yeah. Father, thank you for everyone watching. Bless them, God. Bless them in quarantine, Lord. Everything we talked about, God, let revelation surge. Speak to them.